Hey guys, welcome back, and we are good to go with mastering. The way I'm going to handle this session quickly is just show you how I set up the mastering project, and then once everything's set up, I'm going to go ahead and master the track off camera so that I can do it on the studio monitors instead of using headphones whilst recording on a mic. So we'll do that, and then jump forward, I'll come back and run through every single plugin, the settings, and why I've used those settings for each one, and A/B everything for you guys. So firstly, let's just quickly set up our project. I've brought in all our exported files. I'm going to actually just set the project tempo. We'll add spaces and stuff to the beginning and the end afterwards. We've got our stereo out. I don't want these to go to a stereo out. On the stereo out, I've just loaded up a couple of reference tracks again. You could actually just use the reference tracks straight here as well. You could just drag them in because the way that I set this up, they won't actually end up going through your mastering chain. So what I do, we're going to leave the stereo one for now. We're actually going to work from stems instead, so we'll just leave the stereo one alone. If you check out your macros, there's a little macro here called select the tracks to new folder and add group channel. I've added a shortcut because it's one that I use quite often. So we'll just grab the channels that we want, Control Apple F, and just make sure stereo, track name, mastering bus, create outside folder, and add track. There we go. So now we have a mastering bus with our stems routed to it in a nice little folder, all nice and neat. So let's just, I'll just make this a different shade of gray so that or whatever, let's make it blue. Just so we can see what's going on around here. Mastering bus. Okay, so this is where you are going to set up your master chain. The reason I do it like this, I just like the flexibility of being able to route stuff around so that if I have a radio edit, I can send that to the same mastering bus as well. Additionally, if I need to do any automation on volume and stuff, it doesn't affect the stereo out. So it has kind of been made redundant because you can do exactly what I'm doing here now with this post fader thing if you have your limiter set after the post fader split point. It'll have the same effect as what I'm talking about here, but I just prefer doing it this old way because it just makes more sense to me. It'll kind of, I can see what's going on. So I'm going to get stuck in, load up a couple of plugins, and then run you through the whole master once I'm done. So we'll jump ahead to that in a sec. Okay, guys, we finished up with the master, so I want to run through the mastering channel for you guys. We'll go through each one by one, looking at the settings and why they're there. We can just grab them from here. So first up is Brainworks BX Digital 3. I use this as my mastering EQ. It's got a couple of really cool features that I really like, just make my workflow quite easy. Oh, actually, that one should be a little bit down. So at the top here, we enable link on these two here, and 12 and 12. We set this one to 35 hertz or 30 hertz even. It's fine. And then I just dial in 21K just to get rid of anything that's above that, just in case. So that is the stereo and the mono taken care of there. Turn on the mono maker down here. So pretty much everything under around 80 hertz gets forced into mono. There's no stereo imaging. You can hear what happens if we... Now everything is in mono. You can bring the stereo information back in again like that. So with that setup, there's another cool thing with this plugin, which I really like, is this gain scaling. Now, if you look at the few little changes, I took a little dip out at 300. If you look at these changes, if you ever need to increase the amount of effect that you're adding, you have this gain scale that actually increases the overall effect of all the EQs that you've added. So if you ever feel, or vice versa, if you feel like you've been driving them slightly hard, you can dial back and even go reverse, which will do the inverse of whatever you've done, which is pretty neat. It's nice to have that. So anyways, that's our EQ taken care of. I've just added a little bit of stereo width on this EQ as well. Going from there, of course, also just make sure that nothing is clipping in your gain staging. So this is Black Box Analog Design HG2. It's a fantastic sounding plugin. It's a distortion unit or saturation unit, tube saturation unit. So what it's doing here is this pentode dial and the triode. This is the even harmonics and the uneven harmonics. It has this airband that we dialed in. Just this is like a 12K boost, just to bring back some of the top end when you run it through the tubes. Saturation I've got in, but currently not running it through the saturation circuit at all. We might as well just turn that off. LC, tell you what, let's mute these and just we can one by one just A/B these plugins as well. This one tends to just it has this knack for kind of creating slightly more 3D space and bringing in a mix up front. It's just got a great sound. This let's run it through the limiter. That's on. Off. It's subtle, but you can hear how it just kind of goes slightly dull when this is not on. It just really opens up the 3D imaging in the track and just brings a lot of stuff out of the mix and into the forefront. So another one that does just that as well. I suppose it might be a little bit unusual to be using two distortion plugins on one master, but they all kind of focused quite on certain sounds. I felt like the bottom end needed to punch a little bit more in the mids. So what we're doing is the second harmonic Fit Crusher over here is routed to the mono or mid. The third harmonic Zenith Blender or whatever that means, that is routed to the sides. So we're running MS. We can actually monitor. So you can see what's going where. We can also solo the distortion. So the second harmonic that we've got is focused at the mids. And that's the third harmonic, which is focused on the highs. Actually. But look, the high mid's actually nicer. This is just, it sounds quite distorted when you soloing that, but it's being blended together just to kind of liven things up a little bit. I love this plugin. It's just a great way to kind of really focus in and target specific frequencies that you want to harden up a little bit. So that one is done. We're going to go to the compressor here. This is the FG Mu, and I'm using two compressors in series here. the FG Mu and the FG Red. So firstly, it's going into the FG Mu, this one down here. What this is doing is it's set to, should be set to mid-side. So the mid signal is this one here. So they're both the same setup, the compressors, except the threshold for this one is turned down a fair amount, with stereo linking turned off, just so that we're compressing the mono signal or the mid signal more and leaving more of the dynamics in the stereo signal. So I don't know if it's also quite subtle, but you can kind of the stereo imaging open up a little bit on that one, just because that's not being compressed as hard as the mids. And then my master bus compressor is the FG Red, which is a Focusrite emulation. Not too much compression going on here. Just pushing about -2 dB or something like that. -3. It's one thing I don't like about these is it's kind of hard to tell the from the metering what the gain reduction is, but you should use your ears anyways. So fast attack, auto release, and only a 1.5 thresholds a ratio. So nothing major, just kind of shaving off the top and just gluing everything together. You don't want to be doing major compression at this point unless you're doing a little bit of New York compression or parallel compression. Lastly, this is a post EQ. I just like to run an EQ sometimes after the compression stage and the coloring stage, just because EQ that you add at the beginning tends to get colored by the distortion and the compressors. So if you want to add in a few little things afterwards as well, this I just brought out the mids by about 0.6 of a dB or something like that. It was the mids and the lows around 100, 110, just to make the kick a little bit more punchy. And this is around 1K. I just brought out just a slight bit. It's really see, again, very subtle. I haven't bothered unlinking these. It's just the same across the mid and side, or left and right in this case. You'd have to go into every side. We'll leave it as left and right. And finally, my limiter. This is Invisible Limiter from my AOM bundle, from AOM plugins. It's super transparent limiter, this. I love using this one. I've used others in the past, but I've kind of settled on this recently. So one cool thing I love about this is the unity gain monitoring. So what this does is you can set the level of the limiter without actually affecting the volume. It will keep it at exactly the same volume. So we can drive this up. And it really allows you to hear the effect that's being applied to your mix very well. Cool. So what happens once you've set it, it just makes it a lot easier. If it's too loud, it's hard to hear distortion or when you're crushing the dynamics too much. So leaving that on when you're setting the limits up the first time is great. And then when you start A/Bing and stuff, you can turn off unity gain, and it'll be at max volume now. So other than that, I have this set to linear and 8 times oversampling or 4 times might be enough as well. We have the overshoot set to clip and latency normal. That's not something you have to worry about. That's pretty much it. This I would generally set to negative 0.3 as a rule. Some people say -1, some people say -2, some people say -5. But a -0.3 dB is a good middle ground, and it's one that a lot of people use. The reason why you do this is you can master to 0, but mastering to 0 with audio that is eventually going to be compressed, which is the case with MP3, can be problematic. At 0, you can introduce artifacts and stuff in the conversion process. So to just counter that, especially if you're going to be uploading files to, I'm not 100% sure actually what SoundCloud's codec is, but if they're using something like an MP3 codec and you're going to be uploading stuff to SoundCloud, or you're going to be sending MP3s to Beatport or to your label or whatever, it makes sense to bounce it just under 0 dB so that you don't run into any troubles later on. Another thing that I actually forgot to do is just quickly run a process on all these files, remove DC offset. You should do that at the beginning of your session as well, just in case there are any issues with the offsets on your files. So that is pretty much it at this stage. I'm not going to do anything. Let me just point out one thing. This is one of the reasons why mastering with stems is such a good idea sometimes. You can hear if we pull out this the way it was, when we bounce the track because of an automation or something like that. Yeah, how the attack for the kick completely got lost in the bounce. So this is one good thing about having stems. If this was just a stereo file, we would have had to go back and rebounce the entire thing and make sure that it was all fine before coming back to master it again. So this can save your life when you are doing sessions like this. For small mistakes like that, you can actually just fix them up. Also, just over here, just to make sure that these things hit really hard, just did a sort of manual sidechain on the synth section there, just to make sure that the punch of the kick comes through very, very hard there. So lastly, one thing you can do sometimes as well, I'm not going to bother with it yet, I don't think it really needs it all that much, but in breakdowns you can actually then go and do some automation on breaks to kind of add a little bit more dynamics. Something like that. I just want to quickly just show you how this works now as well. In this case, because the limiter is located pre-fader, this automation that we're doing here is actually going to turn down what's coming out of the limiter. For example, see, that's actually turning down what's coming out of the limiter, and then it's going through the fader to the automation. What we can do as well, excuse me, is to flip pre-fader above the limiter. So what happens now is everything over here is being affected by the volume automation. However, what's going to the limiter is what's coming out after the fader. So it's the limiter's output is always going to be constant here. This is just how hard you're driving the limiter now with the automation. So you'll see it will sound slightly different. So it is getting softer there, but not quite as much, because all that's happening now is it's just not driving the limiter as much. But you'll see... What's happening there now is in this section, it's actually not limiting at all, because we're lessening the dynamics, because we've taken it, the fader, pre-fader, we've lowered the volume and then sent it into the limiter. So that can be handy for opening up the breakdowns in a track where you want a little bit more dynamics, and then kind of automate it back up to its original point when you want it to punch again. Like so. Cool. One last thing. Please don't bounce your tracks out as is without a pre-roll to the track. It's really annoying when you get stuff on promo and a record box doesn't pick up the start of the track because there's no transient. It's just good practice to, well, I just set it up to 16th notes and just drag it over. So you have just a millisecond or two of pre-roll. And additionally, another thing that you should do is make sure that you set your fades correctly as well. So that's fine. Just do a fade out, because you'd be amazed how many times I get tracks sent to me where they'll be the end of the track and it'll just go click at the end because they haven't faded it out properly. Do that and it'll be all nice and neat and tidy. And now you are pretty much good to go. So you can head over to export audio, export, select where you want to go. We're going to do... That reminds me. I've actually forgotten a crucial element here. UV22HR. This is a ditherer because Invisible Limiter doesn't have a ditherer built into it. If you're using software like FGX, for example, this one you can set the dither options to 24 to 16-bit. So what you want to be doing, because you are bouncing from a 32-bit file down to a 16-bit file, you're lowering the resolution. So dithering is just smooths out the transition from the 1-bit rate to the next as you drop down. So just set that to 16. You don't need to worry about auto black and the other settings. Just make sure that you are dithering down to 16. It's probably not something that you'd find audible at all, but you do want to do that before you actually export your mix. So with that done, we're just going to select wave, 16-bit 44.1, and you are good to export. You can hit export and we're all done. So thank you guys for sticking around for this course. I hope you guys find this useful and have learned something in the process. Till next time, I will see you soon. Cheers.